OMAKASE, The Life and Words of author M. Karen. If this is our first time meeting each other, let me give you a brief introduction. My name is Max. I write books for a living. I've been creating writing advice and inspiration stuffs for about half a decade or so. I am non-binary. My pronouns are they, them, and welcome to the 39th episode of my writing advice and inspiration podcast, OMAKASE. The format goes a little bit like this. First, I'm going to tell you about my process, my creative process, what I've been working on, the struggles with writing. Then we're going to be covering 2 viewer questions, one on evoking feelings on the reader, and one on narration. After that, we have the prompt, a creative segment where I propose a weird, bizarre, or in this case, just a simple writing exercise. And your task is to either A, create something based on it, or if you're busy writing something else, like you probably are, think about writing for a little bit. Think about how the prompt would apply to your characters. Okay? Okay. Before we get a move on with the show proper, I want to let you know that in the description of this podcast or video are a bunch of handy links, such as where to support me, where to send questions, and where to find the song that you listen to at the beginning and at the end of the show. And so, let's begin with me. I think it may also be because I actually set up the microphone correctly this week. It's not like I've been making content for years, Unfortunately, I am still human, but I may sound a little bit funny. I mean, I think that I sound really good. Definitely I sound better than yesterday. If anything, because the remnants of that awful cold that I had are now entirely gone. But I think I sound a little different because my energy levels are different today. I have been changing my schedule, my daily writing routine. I've been getting up super early in the mornings. And if you've been following me forever, you know that that's what I used to do. And you may be wondering, why did I stop? Well, I stopped because life has been crazy. It has been crazy since last year, and the first 4 to 5 months of this year have been silly, ridiculously silly. And I wanted to rein things back in. I wanted to build that routine again. And as with anything, the worst part of building a routine, especially something that involves changing your sleeping schedule, is getting started. So that's what I was doing this week. Getting up at 5 in the morning, just like I used to back in the day. And strangely enough, getting up is not the problem. If anything, the problem's been reconciling the reality that although I would love to get up in the morning, grab the computer and start writing, that is not how my body as an organism works, and I have to take care of myself first, get some food, make coffee, and then I feel human enough to actually start writing. I hate that. I hate having to feel human enough to write. I also, I hate having this realization every time that, although I would love to be able to write for 8 hours at a time straight with no stops, 1, that's incredibly unhealthy. You should be taking breaks. And I am over making that mistake in my life. So, I've been keeping track of my days, and I can see, just for how long I write. And I wish there was a way that I could spend more time writing, because I'm crazy like that. But I also realize I also have my lovely wife to keep me in check. And just take a deep breath and realize, you know what? Time is the time that it is. I've been getting writing done. The tasks have been completed. I'm pushing forward the story. It's almost complete. The book is doing the thing that it always does, where I think the book's gonna finish and then 10,000 more words show up. So I'm not particularly worried. I'm getting up at 5 a.m. every morning. I make my coffee. I put on my makeup. I sit at the table. I pull out my computer. And once the caffeine has kicked in, I write. I've been starting to do this little, not a ritual, not a routine, but just beginning my writing mornings with a little bit of hyping up, listening to music, usually the music that I would listen to while walking, imagining the characters, and then actually giving myself time to envision what the chapter is going to be like, what the scene's going to be like. It doesn't always work like that, but it helps to just come into the writing session holding almost like a photo negative of what the scene might be. It seldom turns out to be that way, but it helps to have a kind of direction, especially with the very volatile writing that I have, where sometimes the whole outline gets, thrown out the window on page 1. That's writing, though. And as for my writing, I've been having fun, I've been creating, I've been getting up in the mornings, even for the days that I don't have any writing to do. It's been good. I've been getting a lot of stuff done. I've been spending lots of lovely time with my wonderful wife. And if anything, waking up early reminds me of a different time. Waking up and seeing the house all empty, all still. Sunrise happens so late that at 5 the sky's dark. The street lights are still on. It's cold and chilly, and I can see the steam rising, the vapor rising from my coffee cup. Some days I feel like writing outside, even though it's way too cold for that. But there's that sting, that promise of a once winter that I feel in the mornings when I wake up. And I miss it. I love winter the most. Not because of holidays or anything. It's that cold, that sting. Waking up in the mornings also reminds me of a different time. Back when I worked somewhere else, and I did something else. And I wasn't the happiest. But something about that routine. I think it was because I always started my mornings writing. I think that's what it was. Back when I worked at, the laboratory, I would get there early. I would run up to this attic that I had cleaned up, to this old desk that had been there since God knows when, and I would sit down and I would write for half an hour before work began. Yeah. It was nice. But those days are gone. And time has changed, and it is okay to feel a little nostalgic, but also to keep one's gaze set on the future. This book's coming along well. It's doing things that I love. It's doing things that I know that I do. It's gonna require revision. It's doing that thing where a character says something and I realize, this is gonna need to be established like 100 pages ago. And I will do that. But for now, before we advance to the next segment, I want you to hold an image in your mind. I want to pass a photo negative to you. I want you to imagine yourself, and this may be fantasy if you have kids, and I know. The early morning in your house, in your apartment, in the little place that you call home. The stillness of morning, the quietness of morning, and the loneliness of morning. The sky is dark outside, but it is not night. It is day, slowly growing brighter and bluer. Day. Think of that loneliness. It will come back at the end of the show. Okay? Okay. Now, before we go over today's questions, I gotta let you know real quick about the people who make this show possible. My podcast is here thanks to you, the wonderful people directly supporting me and the podcast. There is no middleman. I don't do promotions. You're not gonna hear me talking about that service or that service and using coupon code OMAKASE at checkout. I like to keep this between you and me. If you really enjoy the podcast, if I've helped you, all you gotta do is treat me to one cup of coffee. Link in the description down below. That is coffee.com/mkaren if you're interested. ko-fi.com/mkaren patreon.com/mkieran. That right there is the number one place to support me. But if you want to get cool perks, you can check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/mkieran, pledge $1 a month, and get this podcast a little bit early. Also, in case you're wondering, everyone who sends support my way, regardless of what website it comes from, gets the shout out at the end of the show. But before we move on, I want to give a big shout out to one of my biggest supporters, Rival Moonlight. Rival Moonlight has a DeviantArt page. You can find out more about his writing and his art over at deviantart.com/Rival Moonlight. And now, for viewer questions. Every week, I take 2 questions from my comments, from my mentions, from my email, and I cover them in full here on the show. Before I say anything else, though, I want to give you the formal disclaimer that the following is merely just my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. Don't take it as gospel. Instead, take it as one person's experience with writing. Take what works for you, throw away what doesn't, and seek to keep on learning. Okay? Okay. Today's first question comes from a dear listener, and they talked with me about how they were struggling with writing because they were feeling like the words they were putting on the page were lacking feeling. They mentioned in their email how they are worried that the reader will consume their story and will come feeling nothing out of it. So let's talk about evoking feeling. How can we as writers evoke feelings in our readers? I think everyone probably has an answer to this because everyone looks for different things in novels. From my point of view, I find that I relate the most to the characters and I feel the most in the story when the story itself is grounded in the characters themselves. The story is about them, not some sort of overarching global conflict, but rather about characters. And I am not saying that you can't write stories about spiraling global conflicts, but that I prefer them when at the core of it all is about a person's story, or a group of persons. The personal struggle is something that I very much relate to. And I almost feel it to be a treat when a story just lets you inside of a character's head, really lets you see how they work, how they think. So right away, one of my recommendations, and something that I really enjoy doing in fiction, is really bring the camera close. Really bring the story close to what your character feels, what they think. I have read many novels where I come out of the story feeling as though the main character was a stranger. Like, never at any point in the story I felt like the protagonist let us in to what they were really feeling. And the story was moving from plot element to plot element, action to action, scene to scene, without really analyzing the main character's motives or point of view. But I think that if you're focusing on making the story about them and really showing their point of view, you will immediately get over that. The second thing that makes me feel a lot of things when I'm reading books is when characters themselves are tested, when the story pushes the characters in directions that sometimes contradict their own beliefs, or test them in ways that makes me as the reader doubt if the character is able to succeed. These enormous gargantuan tasks that can be as tangible as overcoming a crisis or a catastrophe, to the more subtle trials of life, like finally emerging from a great grief, getting over the loss of a friend. It's not so much a matter of scope, but a matter of value. How big is this trial? How big is this challenge for this character, considering what we know about them? And not only that, but also getting to see their own process. What do they feel about it? What does it make them feel? What is it like for this character to try to get up in the mornings? What is it like for them to overcome the grief of the loss of someone dear to them? So, I actually paused the recording for a second because I really needed to think about this and really think about what I was about to say. Because there is this trope. There is this recurring, it's a joke really now. And I post that joke all the time because I really do see it as a joke. That if you want your readers to feel something, just kill the main character. Or just have some horrible calamity fall on them for seemingly no good reason. And I feel that most of the time everyone laughs along and goes, haha, that's silly. But every once in a while, I do see people in the comments legitimately offering that piece of advice with no hint of sarcasm whatsoever. And that right there is silly. The thing is this. Much like any other trope, simply killing your characters with the goal of trying to evoke feelings in your readers is misguided because it focuses on content. Example, kill a character, as opposed to the context. When a character dies in fiction, it is sad for the reader, not because a character died, but because a character they felt a connection to died. A character they had gotten to know and were attached to. Death for death's sake does absolutely nothing. Death with no connection doesn't do anything and evokes no feeling. It is similar in a way. Oh man, am I gonna get real? It's similar in a way with the loss of life that happens exterior to us. You hear about the death of a friend's friend, or of a relative's friend, or someone outside of your sphere of life. And this loss is sad. It is. Of course, we feel bad for the people left here without their loved ones. But it's not as heartbreaking as if you had actually known the person. When you know someone, you make a connection with them. You share something that you wouldn't have otherwise. And you get to know them. This right here is the key. It's what I'm trying to get across. Let the reader get to know your characters. Let the reader see something, a part of your character that is otherwise hidden behind the mask that we wear every day. Oh, and one more thing. I know that you sent me this question while you're still writing the first draft. And I gave you the real answer. But I also want to slide under the door that I recommend overlooking these worries while you're writing the first draft, because these worries are magnified when you're writing a story for the first time, or simply find yourself halfway through the first draft of a novel. Writing a book is hard, and I know you can get through it. Keep writing. If you're right in there in the first draft and you're imagining scenes and giving them shape on the page, if you're forming your character's thoughts and words one at a time, if you are in there, don't worry about this right now. Wait until revision to give elements like these their true form. And I know that if you're in there, this just sounds like don't worry about it now, worry about it later, but I want you to trust me on this one, okay? You can spend a lot of time worrying, while you should instead be spending that time writing. I was originally gonna talk about endings, mostly because I experienced a really good ending in a piece of fiction recently, and because I'm writing an ending myself. But this question was a little bit more urgent, so I wanted to cover this one first. But all I want to say is that evoking feelings in the reader, much like theme, much like endings, these are not written, but rather they are rewritten, they are revised. Get the words on the page. Write them now, make them shine later. Okay? You are not postponing your problems. You're leaving them for the face of the process where they are to be taken care of. Okay? Finish that first draft. I know you can do it. And of course, I hope that helps. Now, let's move over to the second question of the day. I got a question from a dear listener wanting to get my take on a conversation that's been going around regarding narration. And this, of course, this is just as ancient as fiction itself. Let's talk about the nature of narration itself. As the dear writerly friend phrased, is narration the voice of the author or the voice of the characters? And this right here doesn't have a hard answer. I think this depends on the writer and their own point of view. I am certain there are writers out there who see the narration as their own voice and the voice they project into the page. I do not see it like that at all. And I mean, I guess you could have surmised as much considering the kind of advice that I give. But when I sit down to write, I don't sit in front of the computer and I think, what am I gonna say next? My thought process is always, what is this character gonna say next? How would they describe this? How would they describe that? I have been writing stories in first person for a long time, and that's why my process kind of works like that. If anything, because I just really want the story to feel like that character. Now, I want to take a step back and say that I don't have hard feelings towards people who put their own voice in the story. I don't think that's wrong or anything. I don't think there's a right or wrong in this whole argument, but I think it showcases how everyone tackles writing differently. Some people do see themselves as the voice that is guiding the story, and that's okay. I just don't do that. Whenever I sit down to write, I think of the character. I consider what I know of them, what I know is in the story, and what I know needs to be in the story, and I follow their voice. Some of my characters have mannerisms that I don't have. Some of my characters say things that I don't believe in, and I'm shaking my head. I don't believe in at all. But sometimes I do get the character that makes me go, oh yeah, that's a cool way to phrase that. I would have never said that in that particular way. But it's all fun. Maybe it's a kind of acting. I don't know. But when I sit down to write, my goal in mind is to capture this character's voice. And honestly, that's been the thing that just has helped me the most with beginning writing sessions and beginning novels. Because instead of trying to find the first line, and we all know that's one of the worst, hardest things in writing, instead I just think of the character and I ask myself, how would they begin the first line? We talked about this last week. And because we talked about it last week, I kind of felt like this kind of led in from that. What I want to do now is that I want to turn the conversation towards you. How do you tackle narration? Do you see it as your voice? Or do you see it as the character's voice? Or is there a third option that we haven't covered, that I haven't thought about? Let us know. Again, there is no right or wrong. If anything, again, this is a great exercise to see how other people do things. And honestly, that was one of the most fun parts of being in a creative writing course, because it would let you see how other writers did things. If you have been following this podcast, you know that, sometimes the other writers at the creative writing course become great examples of bad examples. And that's okay too. But I also did find people who inspired me. People whose process has become a part of my process. So you never know. That's why it helps to always keep an open mind. Okay? Okay. Also, I don't know if the mic has been catching it, but there's been dogs barking all day. I don't know what party, they're throwing, but I certainly wasn't invited. And that hurts my feelings. What I truly ask, oh, there they are. I really just want to, scream out the window and ask who let these dogs out. Okay, if you caught me leading to, trying to get us to land at that punchline, give yourself 1 max point. I haven't given out max points in years, but hey, there you go. There's an option to get 1 max point. That really was a bit for the end, the end of the video club. But hey, guys, it's okay. You get a little bit of silliness from me now. I've had to stop recording 20 times because of the barking dogs. So you're catching a little bit of the process from behind the scenes, okay? But enough with that. Back to the show. Let's tackle today's prompt. As you know, the format goes like this. Every week, I try to give you a weird exercise, a cool story idea, or sometimes just a character question. As we're doing today, again, I am going to give you a brand new character question. And your job is to create something or just merely think about writing. Life can really get in the way, and it's really important to be able to think, to continue stretching our creative writing muscles. Think about stories, consider how we would tackle them, and if able, work on that. I'm doing a little series on character questions to really help you bring your characters to the forefront, just to look at them in different ways. I posted this a slightly joking post on Twitter the other day, but I was asking, hey, would your character dab? And I know that sounds silly and funny, but my wife and I and a few of our friends spent a long time just going back and forth through all of our characters. Would X character dab? No, for this reason. Would Y character dab? Yeah, because of this reason. And it became a nice, cool little character exercise. Don't worry though, today we're not going to talk about dabbing. As for today's character question and prompt, I want you to go back to that photo negative I gave you at the beginning of the show. I want you to imagine the place where your character lives, or the place they happen to be staying at this morning. I want you to imagine them in the loneliness of this place, with no company, with silence, with the sky still pitch black. The sunrise is coming, but not yet. And in this great loneliness, what does your character find? What do they feel? Do they find comfort, or do they hate it? Do they long for someone or for something? Or is this a chance to find peace and quiet for an instant before the next great fight? Think about it. Pause the podcast if you want to. Keep going on your walk, keep exercising. Keep washing the dishes. Lie in bed for a little bit. What would each of your characters feel when faced with such a loneliness? I know what I felt when I sat in the quietness, in the loneliness of morning. But what does your character find? This is a question that you and only you can answer. Okay? That right there is your homework. If you want to let me know what your characters thought or what they would do, let me know in the comments of the YouTube post or send me an email. You know what to do. And now, let us return to last week's question, because remember, the other half of the prompt is me telling you what I would have done or what I did on last week's prompt. If you want to know what my characters feel when facing that loneliness, you're going to have to wait for next week. Because today we're tackling last week's prompt, how do my characters have fun? And I actually had to stop for a little bit, because this current work in progress has 3 main characters. And although there's an answer that is the immediate answer that comes to mind, almost a gut feeling kind of answer, I realize that it's not the complete answer. So how do my characters have fun? let's call them C and B. C and B. A part of me, the immediate answer that I want to say is that they love playing video games. But that's not true. That's not how they have fun. They have fun together. Spending time together is their favorite thing. They've been friends forever. They are so close. They are like the best of friends. Probably the happiest two people that I've ever written about. That's not true. One of them is really sad about what's happening in the story, but that's neither here nor there. When they are together, they are happy. They are so happy when they are together. So when I think about how do they have fun, I imagine like the situations that I've written about in the story of them playing games together. Over the internet or on the couch together. But really, as I've also written in the story now that I realize, I've also written about them just spending time together. Just, going out to grab lunch. And the moments where they're just lost talking with each other. Going back and forth, making stupid jokes. It's golden. It's great, and that's how I know that's when they have the most fun. As for the third character, let's call them D. D loves talking with people. D just loves talking. They love just talking to strangers. This is how you know. This is how you know that, like, sometimes I write characters that are absolutely nothing like me. Because the idea of talking to a stranger in the streets is like the most non-thing that I could ever do. If you ever see me talking to a stranger in the streets, that's how you know that's not me. That's my doppelganger. You must defeat them. But that's how you know that's not me. That's not me. But that's who D is. D loves talking to people. D is the kind of person who would literally just start a conversation with anyone because they just love talking to people. They love going back and forth. They love confusing them with ridiculous prose. It's funny. And it's so completely unlike me that sometimes I'm a little baffled by their choices, by how they feel about things, but I realize that's because it's me. That's because I'm the person writing. So my job as the writer is just to continue translating what they feel and what they think without putting any of my judgment in there. Without, sticking my spoon in the pot. So there you go. I think C and B love spending time together, and that's when they have the most fun. When life feels warmest, softest, and lightest. Hey guys. When it comes to characters and to making readers feel things, I do think that it is ultimately about showing who those characters really are. Is there a bigger injustice to a character than to make them leave the story without them showing even a little bit of who they are, what they believe in, what they hold in their heart to be true? I know it's a really real thing to say, but I really agree with it. It is similar to hearing about the loss of someone outside of your sphere of influence. Someone who you might have seen once, or you might have heard about, or you might have actually not known until the bad news. It sucks, and it hurts, especially to see someone else grieve. Because stuff like that takes a long time to heal. I mean, I would know this is literally what the story is about, but it hurts more when it's someone you know, when it's someone you grew close to. And I'm not saying kill your characters, I'm saying let your characters be people. Let your characters grow close to the reader. Let them open up. Wherever we go, we wear masks. Sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. But when we grow close to people, it is because they let us see behind the mask. And more often than not, we grow close to people. We grow close to characters. Because these things that they show us sometimes happen to be oh so similar to the things we hide behind our mask. And so, welcome to episode 39 of OMAKASE, my writing advice and inspiration podcast. I hope today was fun. I hope that I showed you a different point of view, but really I hope that I was good company during your ride to work, that time you spent doing chores, or that little time that you have during your break at work. I hope that between now and the next time we meet that you have some time to write, and I wish you the best of luck in your current writing project. If you really like this show, or if you think I did a good job, please consider leaving a 5-star rating on iTunes. It would really help a lot. A little podcast like this can really only gain traction through a lot of reviews. So if you can't support me monetarily, if you can't buy me a cup of coffee, could I please ask you to spend a couple minutes to just leave a 5-star review on iTunes? That would mean a lot to me. But regardless of that, thank you for watching. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me. And I am going to slide over to the end of the video club, where I give a shout out to every single person who supported me. You don't have to tag along. You really don't have to, but there might be silly jokes here and there along the way. And I am also not allowed to edit anymore, so there's that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Okay, are they gone? Okay. They are my favorite. You're my favorite customer. Alright. So, if you have been following me on Twitter, you know that I've been posting a lot more. And I've been posting a lot of silly jokes. And that's really because I'm finally getting my act together on Twitter and actually, posting regularly on Twitter, which, listen, the more time that passes, the more I hate social media, the more I just want to spend less time on social media. But, spend a couple minutes every day just scheduling a funny post for the next day. That's my Twitter daily routine. But you might have also heard that I spent a Sunday recently selling stuff at the flea market. We have a flea market here where I live, and I've gone there so many times for selling or for buying stuff. And I'm going to tell you right now, here are the 2 laws of going into my local flea market, okay? If you are buying, by which I mean that you're walking through the flea market, just looking at people's wares, looking at their spots, just, looking at what they have for sale and seeing if you want it. If you were not invited, if you showed up at the flea market at the last minute, if you're the last person who replied to the message to, go to the flea market, you will find something. You will find something amazing, and you will go home as the only person who found something. The other law is that if you are selling, if you're at the flea market selling, whatever things you don't want to have in your house anymore, much like me and my brother are to do, if you are the last person to reply, if you are the last person to decide to go, you're gonna make the biggest bank. Those right there are the unalienable truths and laws of the flea market. My brother wanted to go sell stuff, and my wife and I were like, I don't know, we don't have anything to sell, we barely have things. Max barely has anything, and it's because I live a very minimalistic lifestyle. Listen, I think I talked about this last time. Didn't I talk about this last time? I keep very few things, because for a good period of my life I was moving every 6 months, so I like to keep a light backpack. But, last minute we decided, we'll grab all these bags of things that we have in the shed, and then we'll just sell them, and we'll see whatever we make. And if we make enough to buy lunch, then that's good. We made bank! We sold so much! Jeez, it was so much money! But the reason why I'm here, is because I made a reference to Tommy Wiseau's magnum opus, The Room, saying, oh, you're my favorite customer. We had a guy who was our favorite customer. There was this one guy, right around our age too, who kept coming back to our stand to buy more things. It was great. Also, shoutouts to the one teenage girl who showed up at our stand asking if we had any Naruto. Listen, that girl's going places, listen. You go, Naruto girl, you go. Anyhow, what am I doing here today? Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be doing shoutouts. Hey everybody, welcome back to the shoutouts. I'm gonna give a shout out to every single person who has supported me through coffee.com/mkaren and patreon.com/mkaren. Links in the description down below. Let's begin with coffee. Beginning with Vic. Das Danya, whose name apparently I did get right. Thanks, Das. They are the ones who sent the second question of the day. Lishadra, Angela, Kristen Lofton, Sylvia Leitilla, and Polly Craftwell. Now, as for the patrons, we are beginning, of course, with Rival Moonlight, Soul Muse, Lacey, Irina Phoenix, A. Howard, Alisa Dudley, Heather is Writing, Nicola, Brenda, Amelia, Pat Eichson, Melanie Ashford, Shido Tsubasa, Alex Cast, Alistair Baywood, Caitlin, Blarg, Kameshore Rao Shillery, Kathy Lindsay, Kaylee, Mary Foster Smith, Juan Nunes, Raquel Fernandez, Sylvia Leitilla. Sylvia Leitilla, you double dipped. Oh, I think you might be shifting from Patreon to coffee. Ah, that explains it. For a second, I'm like, Sylvia, you double dipped. Thanks for the support. Janusz Hejbotsky, Sky D. White, Eleanor, Renee Solia, Connor, Jay Suwiki, Rhiannon August, Nicolay, J. Tonic Kirkwood, James. Let me try that again. James. Erasos! I do realize that last week I didn't shout Erasos, so I wanted to really give it a real shout. Noam Sohar, Novels and Tomes, Kiel, Roa, Lier Killo, Clem Pastor, Nicole Grissom, Biting the Sun, Christiane, Shimmer Tales, Amanda Stevens, C.E. Richards, Zero Woods, K.M. Anderson, and last but by no means least, Alexo Hoshi. Hey guys, how y'all doing? Now, I know what you're thinking. Max, on Twitter you talked about a doggo being next to you. We were selling at this space, right? You know, we got a really good space. We were right next to the food, right near the entrance. We got so much traffic, it was so good. But the seller next to us, which apparently my brother had actually sold next to before, that seller had a dog, like this cute little small dog. And, you know, it's coastal California, okay? For half of the morning it was foggy and cold and gray. It was beautiful. It was the perfect weather. Mwah, it was perfect. And then at around 11:30, 12, the sun decided to come out, which I thought was a bad move. I don't know about you. Listen, I don't want to say I'm anti-sun, but I just would rather if the sun just, I don't know, minded its own business and left me and coastal California to be foggy and gray and beautifully chilly all day, forever, for all eternity. I do love cold weather. You know what I don't like? The sun. That sounded so personal. You know who I don't like? The sun. But yeah, there's a doggo. The sun was really bright, so the doggo just fell asleep on the side. It just napped for hours. It was very, very good. Now, this episode has been silly. It got real silly in the end zone. What I want to say is, hey, thanks for tagging along. I'm recording this on the 30th of April 2019, the day that someone decided to unleash the hell that is the Sonic the Hedgehog movie trailer. And now that I have seen into the very depths of hell, I'm a changed person. So, I said I promised I wouldn't do any more silly, but have you seen that trailer? It's so bad! Anyhow, hey, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with me. Writing's hard, but we can always laugh at how the Sonic fandom just will never catch a break. They will never catch a break. But I haven't recorded in a bit, so I'm getting all the silliness out. I'm trying to get back to serious mode. I want to say something insightful for the end of the episode, but you know what? I think today we're going to leave on a light note, okay? Listen, I want you to have fun with writing. I want you to take your characters and to really explore their story, their background, who they are. Let the reader in. Let them in behind the mask. At least I can speak for myself, but that would make me fall in love with your characters. Regardless of whether they're good people or bad people. Just getting to see the way they justify things, the way they explain themselves to the mirror. I think that would make me fall in love with your characters. For now, I will leave you with the words I tell myself every morning when I wake up. Today is a good day to write.